Until November, you will likely hear a lot about polling numbers and where the candidates stand. Sherry is asking, where do all these political polls come from, and why isn't the average citizen asked to participate? Well, here's Victor Puente with the answer to that good question.
There are multiple well-known polling organizations you may hear us talk about here on air, like Gallup, the Pew Research Center, Quinnipiac, the website 538, even polls paid for by both major political parties. Average citizens are asked to participate, but your chances of being randomly selected for one of these polls is pretty low. Most of these larger polls are looking for random people, and if you're someone who wants to be interviewed, then you're not really random. Pew's website says, quote, "The kinds of people who might volunteer for our polls are likely to be very different from the average American. At the very least, they would probably be more politically interested and engaged, which would not be a true representation of the general population." Instead, these groups use things like mailing lists or random phone number generators to find enough people to get what they consider to be a statistically significant sample. Pew Research says the odds of being chosen for one of their polls is around 1 in 23,000. If you have a good question, you can email us at goodquestion@wkyt.com. I'll see you on WKYT Mornings.